Okay, round 2 of irregular preterite verbs. Here's another group of irregulars. This first group are just verbs that there's no pattern, but they're super common. And one thing you might notice is the more common a verb is, the more messed up it gets. Okay, so here's your first group. These 5 verbs have their own strange form, and you just got to memorize those 5. So ser and ir, to be and to go, those are actually conjugated the exact same way in preterite tense. So you tell the difference by context. So yo fui is I was or I went. The next verb is dar, which means to give, and that is basically, it's an AR verb, but it has IR verb endings. It's kind of funky. Ver, same thing, it's just irregular. Hacer, it's got these irregularities. Just look at those and practice using them, and they'll stick. Unfortunately, there's no real pattern for these guys. But luckily, this next group of irregulars, there is a pattern. So if you look at these guys, you got andar, which means to ride or to go or to stroll. Andar. Caber, which means to fit. I'm sorry, I should say the stem. So andar changes to anduv. That's your new stem. Caber, to fit. That's cup. Estar is to be. That changes to estuv. Haber is ub. Hacer, that's actually going to be is because of these endings. Poder, pud, poner, pus. Querer, quis. Saber, sup. Tener is tub. Venir is vin. Decir is di. Producir, produ. Traer is tra. Okay, so you get your new stem. And these guys are in their own group. They get their own set of endings. Okay, so like I walked or I strolled or I rode, anduve. There's no accents on these. Anduve. Cupo, it fit. Cupo, it fit. Estar, estuv. So estuvimos, we were. Haber, you're usually going to only use it in third person. Okay, so hubo, like present tense, haber is I. So if you want to say in present, like there's a book, hay un libro. If you want to say there was a book, or there was more likely an event, is when you would use this in preterite. So like hubo un terremoto, there was an earthquake. Okay, hacer, hice, hiciste. Take note of hacer because it's irregular in this form right here. Is, that C right there is going to change to a Z when you have the O after it. And again, if you've seen the previous videos, you know why. It's because you want to keep this sounding like an S instead of a K. If I put an O after it, it would be ico, and that doesn't make sense. So, hacer, hizo. Poder, pud. You could say pudo, pudiste, pudieron. And let's see, all the rest of these down through venir are normal, or they follow a similar pattern. One thing to be aware of is these 3, and there's a couple others like it, decir, producir, traer. Any vowel then CIR verb like these, decir, producir, conducir, lucir, any of those guys, you're going to have this J in the stem, and that takes the place of this I in the plural third person, right? So decir would be dije, dijiste, dijo, all normal. Then you get over here, instead of dijeron, that's not what we say. The J takes the place of that I, so you'd say dijeron, produjeron, trajeron. So we went over that. Hizo is kind of funky. The reason these guys have numbers right here, querer, saber, tener, is because the meaning changes just a bit, or it can change. So you look at querer, that can mean like I wanted to, as in I intended to, but I didn't. So you're kind of implying that it didn't happen. So, for example, I could say something like, quise llamarte ayer. I wanted to call you yesterday. And it works kind of the same as in English, right? So if I say quise llamarte yesterday, or quise llamarte ayer, we know that that means you wanted to call, but you didn't. It's implying that it never happened. Okay? Saber, remember that means, or that meaning changes a little bit. And the reason these change is because preterite is for events. It's specific instances of things happening, right? So querer is I intended, I attempted, but was unsuccessful. Saber is I found out. So, or I realized, or it's like I learned at that moment, as opposed to just generally knowing something. Because knowing something isn't an event; it's just a condition. So, saber changing or used in preterite is going to be like finding something out, or I learned about something, or I realized something. Tener, again, these all have to be specific instances or actions of something happening. So tener would be, it wouldn't be like I possessed something. It's got to be an action, right? So it'd be like I had a sandwich, tuve un sándwich, or somebody had a baby, ella tuvo un bebé. Okay, so these guys are pretty straightforward. They're just in their own little group, so remember them with their different endings. Again, if you think you've got them, you can practice them. I got 1 and 2 groups here. I got 1 and 2 practices here for you. So give those a shot, see how you do, see if you have any questions, see if it makes sense, and we can keep going forward. Good luck.